Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of the HR Exchange Network's HR Book Club 2023. I am Francesca DiMeglio, the editor of HR Exchange Network, and today I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on the book They Did What by Cornelia Gamlin and Barbara Mitchell. Cornelia and Barbara go way back with HR Exchange Network. Cornelia's book, one of her books, was on our summer reading list last year. And both Cornelia and Barbara are columnists for HR Exchange Network, and they've participated in at least one of our events. You can also check out a Q&A I did with them about this particular book, which is now on our site. And basically, this book is a really different kind of read for HR professionals. Cornelia and Barbara talked to a bunch of people in human resources, and they had their own stories since they are longtime HR thought leaders who worked as HR professionals before writing books about it. And these are shocking stories. And so, how they did it was that they created composites of individuals and wrote these little vignettes about things that happen in the workplace that people might not realize HR professionals must deal with on a regular basis. And some of these stories are truly shocking. The cover of the book features a conference room table because of all of the incidents involving that table, namely, a lot of people were having sex on the table. That came up a lot in the early portion of the book. And I was really stunned by that. We all hear about people having inappropriate relationships at work with coworkers or sexual harassment. Of course, that's been in the news in the last, 5, 6 years. However, I never realized how many people were having these inappropriate experiences right at work in the office, getting caught doing so, and then putting HR in such a predicament, such an awkward and horrible place. And it really requires deftness in relationships, in communication, in transparency, and also, you know, HR leaders rely so much on employment lawyers. That came through in this book loud and clear. But what made the book so great to read, you definitely get the usual tips about managing talent and things you need to be doing. However, it's in a different kind of package. Instead of like, here are the 10 things you need to do if someone has sex on the conference room table, you're hearing these HR professionals telling a story to each other in some cases. A lot of the vignettes were centered around a networking group of HR professionals who were sharing their stories and giving each other advice. Sometimes they were talking to spouses. Sometimes, it came up in other discussions. Um, the idea was, though, that you kind of got wrapped up in these HR professionals' lives and their work and their characters. You could relate to them. It was all distributed, all the information and tips and even news and facts were distributed as dialogue. And all of these stories were based on reality. They did change some of the indicators, key indicators. And like I said, it was a composite to protect both the innocent and the guilty. However, it's all based on truth. There were stories about people who tried to get workman's comp because they got bitten by a squirrel on their way to work. There were stories about people who didn't wear underwear to work and, found themselves in compromising positions, people who got drunk at the company event, and or said too much, let out too much information when they were drinking too much or in anger, or accidentally divulged confidential information, and how HR had to deal with it. And what I really loved about this book, aside from the fact that it's super entertaining, so it is one of the fastest reads on the summer reading list, and the shock value is definitely there. You won't believe what some people have done at their jobs, and then the expectations they have to keep their jobs and all these other things. But there's also this way through the characters and their conversations that you gain great perspective about HR through the years. It kind of talks about how HR was once considered an enabler of rules and regulations and how that's really progressed and changed. It talks about the relationship, the close relationship that the CHRO has with the CEO and what that can mean for a company. And then it also talks about, how things have changed for employees in the workplace, the leverage they've gained, the things we're doing now to ensure sexual harassment and those kinds of things are not tolerated. There was a time when you didn't even really talk about that stuff, and they bring that up in the book. They talk about discrimination and how far we've come. Um, for instance, they mention the AIDS epidemic and how some people didn't even want to, keep someone on if they might have had AIDS because people were terrified that they were going to catch it through the air by touching, they didn't realize it was really a sexually transmitted disease. And obviously, things have progressed so much in that world. Many people can control HIV with medication now, very different from the way things were when the epidemic first began. And in any case, you just saw a lot of progress through the lens of these conversations people in HR were having, how they were, kind of mentoring people who were younger in the book. The characters were mentoring some of the younger people. There were some really awkward situations that really gave you pause. And it made you really realize that a lot of people in HR have to have courage. They have to be willing to have those courageous conversations, which, relates back to one of our previous books on the HR book review. In one instance, a prominent older veteran of HR and a man makes a woman who's a junior person just starting out in her career handle something that really was um awkward and inappropriate to give to her. And I don't want to give away too many details because I'd really love for all of you to go out and read this book. I think you'll thoroughly enjoy it. But in any case, it just proves the fact that not everyone has that bravery. Not everyone is willing to have those conversations. And that people make some really big mistakes. There was one instance talking about someone with a mental illness who has an outburst at work, a few of them, and people don't really understand what's going on. And the manager had the best of intentions, was a really great worker, was, rewarded and promoted by someone else in the company who supported him. And yet, with the person with mental illness, he never quite got around to talking to the employee assistance program contact. He never quite had a conversation with the employee. He made a lot of mistakes, and you see that in the book. And it just makes you realize that even when you have the best of intentions and you're a hard worker dedicated to the job, if you don't figure out the right ways to relate to the other people you're working with, it could backfire. You still might not have your job at the end of the day. But more importantly than that, you can make some serious mistakes that could badly affect not just the one employee, but the whole team and yourself and your own, ability to climb the ladder. And that was really, eye-opening for me. I highly recommend the book, not just because I love Cornelia and Barbara, and I do, but also because it is so entertaining to read this book. It is the fastest read, I think, probably on Summer Reading 2023, simply because you get involved in the characters and you're really interested to hear the next shocking story. um, and there's really no loss of them. And in fact, in the Q&A, Cornelia and Barbara say that they'd like to do a sequel to this book, and they are already collecting stories. So if you have any, you are welcome to get in touch with them. They said so here. And I hope you'll stay tuned to HR Exchange Network for all of the book reviews we're doing. We've had some great ones this year, and we've been doing Q&As with many of the authors. So I hope you'll check that out as well. Stay tuned for our events. The next one is corporate learning in September. It's free to join us, and we want to hear from you. And also stay tuned to our daily content. Sign up for our newsletter and join our LinkedIn group. We are constantly talking about these kinds of topics. We can talk about the book there too. And I hope you will do just that. Thank you so much and have a great day.